Okay, let's return to one of our top stories. Earlier we said the South African Reserve Bank had won its application to have the Public Protector's remedial action to change its mandate set aside. Now, the judgment delivered in the North Gauteng High Court, that was today by Justice Cynthia Pretorius. Let's discuss. I'm joined in studio by Azar Jammine, Chief Economist at Econometrics. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
So, she had basically backtracked already. There was an understanding that she was talking about the mandate of the Reserve Bank in a report about other banks. She had gone too far. But was it good that the Reserve Bank still continued with this court case to affirm its current mandate?
Without a doubt, it was a very positive step. And I think what it does is simply entrench the institutional strength of South Africa's judiciary and the way in which that can be used to protect the economy as a whole against irresponsible policies that could be introduced.
Unfortunately, I mean, even investors look at things like institutions and people in key posts. So this undermines the Public Protector's office. Would you say she's done a lot of damage to herself and therefore us?
Unfortunately, she has done a lot of damage to herself. But, you know, in the context of the tensions that are currently existing between different factions within the government, I think that this could well be overlooked as a blot on that institution. And it will simply reinforce the view that what is at stake here is the integrity of South Africa's institutions. And clearly, I mean, you know, a lot depends on the presidential election outcome at the end of the year as to which faction wins the day. And should a certain faction win the day, then that is going to cast doubt on whether the Public Protector will be impartial in the future. But if an alternative faction wins the day, then I think you could well see moves at place to replace the Public Protector.
Okay, so I think you're talking about the pro-President Zuma faction and those who would like to see him replaced, and a lot of his supporters moved from key positions, especially in the economy.
Very much so. It's really a choice between those who seem to have flouted the institutional strength of South Africa and the others who want to really uphold it.
What do you think about what Moody's said? After this Public Protector report, the Reserve Bank did drop interest rates, albeit very, very slightly, but it was after a long period. And Moody's suggested that maybe that was because of political pressure, which I think is a bit unfair. The Reserve Bank has always shown its independence.
I think it's very unfair, and in fact, in a piece I wrote before the Reserve Bank decision, I said that some might see a reduction in interest rates as a political ploy, a move to respond to political pressure. And that might be the very reason why the Reserve Bank refrains from cutting interest rates. But they did what they felt was the right thing.
And it was the right thing, do you believe?
Yes, yes. And I think Moody's was wrong in suggesting that it might have been a move to bowing to political pressure. There's no chance of that being the case. I know the people at the Reserve Bank, yes.
I agree with you totally. In finality, the rhetoric really concerns me, and the fact that this is so technical. So ordinary South Africans find it hard to understand, because what the Public Protector was saying is, no, the Reserve Bank mustn't focus on inflation and the rand. It must focus on growth, something that benefits us all. So that sounds very good. And then the Reserve Bank says, no, because in focusing on inflation, we do help growth and we do help ordinary South Africans. Try and unpack us.
You've summarized it very well, and in fact the recommendation made by the Public Protector can be seen by an economist as actually jeopardizing her image and basically showing her up as not having enough knowledge of economics. Because if you abandon the fight against inflation and you say, let's go for growth, doesn't matter what inflation does, before long, you're going to find yourself facing a huge inflationary spiral, and then you will be obliged to actually backtrack and raise interest rates dramatically, which will actually be even worse for the man in the street. Besides which, an increase in inflation hurts the man in the street more than it does the wealthier sections of society who, through their financial prowess, know very well how to actually exploit higher inflation for their own benefit. And a higher inflation tends to lead to the wealthy becoming wealthier and the poor becoming poorer.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. So to assert then, in your opinion, the current mandate of the Reserve Bank is the best for the poor in South Africa?
Without a doubt, it's the best for the poor. And I would suggest that had it not been for the interference of other structural weaknesses in the economy, we would have found the relatively low inflation environment that we've been living with ever since we've had this kind of monetary regime in place, would have seen our economic growth rate a lot higher than it has been. But there are other structural problems, and it's not the role of interest rates to overcome those structural problems.
Thank you for your explanation, Azar Jammine, Chief Economist of Econometrics.